is Series 3 of Away, a podcast for anyone exploring 12-step sobriety. I'm your host, Steph Roberts. Friends, tonight might not be tonight for you. This episode 6 of season 3, I'm going to examine the second half of step 4 as it appears in the 12 and 12. I'm recording now for a couple of reasons. A, I have a commitment to myself and possibly to a few of you to do this. And my husband's out. So it's a good time because I like to, be present when he's here. And 3, I can't take it. So my former home group, I've talked about in many episodes, and I can't. It's still my husband's home group. And I had stopped going because it wasn't that God had come too much into it, but religion had. And I find that very distressing. I, as you know, I'm an atheist, but I work for a conservative Jewish organization, for which I have a great deal of respect. As you know, I'm also a liberal who works for a very conservative organization, politically and religiously, though many of the individuals within it are not religious. Most of them are very conservative, some pro-Trump, some not, some questioning, always skeptical, something I like very much. They are thinkers and intellectuals, so disagreeing with them is not problematic. None of them are sort of ideologues or fundamentalists, so you can have a conversation. And I think on all sides of the conversation, we probably temper our emotions a little bit around it, but it's wonderful for me to, as a liberal, maybe not as progressive as some, but as a Democrat, fairly left-leaning, it seems important to hear all points of view. It's very much how I think of AA. So the problem in AA, as I see it, not in all meetings by any stretch, but in too many, it isn't just God that's brought into it. People like the fundamentalists I have mentioned before bring Christ into it. And Christ is singularly Christian, at least as a savior. And I really don't care about your arguments. He was born a Jew. That's not the point. And I have more problems with most sects of Christianity than I do, say, with Judaism. Judaism makes a lot more sense to me. There is a willingness to question it and to push back. It is a more flexible faith that was meant to and does move with the times, perhaps a little behind the times, but it was meant to be flexible in a way that a lot of Christianity, especially people who, take the Bible literally, or go to Mass and take it literally, that I find very troublesome. And, I could be way off. I mean, there could be sects of Judaism that do the same, that are more devout. Another aspect I appreciate of Judaism that bothers me about Christianity is the missionary thing. AA is meant to be a program of attraction. I don't think we're meant to go out and judge people and try to bring them into our group. Though, of course, there are people who think that's what 12-stepping is about. It's not really. You plant a seed by staying sober. If someone asks you about it, you tell them. It's not a missionary thing. Judaism is not a missionary thing at all. There is no push for conversion. And Islam, it's very interesting. I think it is, this is not a popular point of view. At the moment, it's as if big parts, the fundamentalists of the faith are like the Christians during the Crusades, right? There is violence and something in there. Bill Maher says this all the time, and I don't disagree. Something in there, and I don't know if it's cultural or in the Quran, is more able to be translated or taken at this moment in time as a route to violence. Now, I would love to hear from people who think I'm wrong or know I'm wrong on that, and I like to hear the opposing points of view. As you may or may not know, I came to atheism through, or settled back into atheism, only after a lot of questioning and reading and learning. So I do feel like moderate Muslims, people who believe but maybe don't believe literally, maybe aren't quite so literal, they need to raise their voices against, not just to say we're not all like that, but to say, I think their voices are the only ones that can be heard by fundamentalist ideological believers. I don't think my voice could ever be heard. I don't think Christian voices could ever be heard, because we are, destined for damnation. So I think it is incumbent upon moderate voices to rise up. And I think this in politics too. I think of myself as moderate in many respects, especially in today's climate. I'm much more middle of the road than some of my fellow travelers in politics. But some things, are unquestionable to me. Equality among all women, people of color, LGBTQ community, trans community. Don't care. Everybody's entitled to equality in this country. It's what we're built on. So with that, the reason for my rant and my over explication here is that I was sent I was texted a post from Facebook. I'm no longer on Facebook personally, in part because of this kind of thing. I just get so angry that another member of this home group has become a member of this kind of scary church, in my opinion. It's a little too culty, and it seems to be throwing out fundamentalists left, right, and center. At least it's throwing them into this home group. And they baptized him. So we're on Long Island, where if you believe in God, there is so much beauty. We are literally surrounded by water. We have the Great South Bay, the Atlantic Ocean. The North Shore is all, it's spectacular. You've got the Hamptons out there, which have spectacular beaches. Like, just don't even think about the houses. Like, it's like if you believe in God, clearly his creation, it's right here. I mean, I'm looking at the Great South Bay now, with lightning crashing over it, which is just, when it hits the water, is awe-inspiring. But there is a scientific explanation. So he was one of the best. So we're surrounded by water. We're in, I mean, parts of the island are ugly, right? But we are in, potentially, if you look for it, one of the most beautiful places ever. And they baptize him in what I think is maybe a kiddie pool or an above ground pool, like in a backyard. Love kiddie pools, love above ground pools, love in ground pools, love saltwater pools. Lucky to have a pool at all. I don't have a pool. That's fine with me. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying. But I mean, when you've got beauty everywhere and you've got awe-inspiring everything everywhere, even if you're afraid of the waves in the ocean, I mean, go to the bay. Go like utilize God's beauty in creation. So then I couldn't stand it. I started getting all worked up, which I'm sure these people would love. So if you're listening, you push my buttons, you win. So then I use my company's Facebook page just to look at his profile. And then I got even more enraged because he happens to be, I've talked about him before, he happens to be a guy who stole a great deal from the home group, and the home group decided not to press charges, which is their right, autonomous. If I had still been a member, I would have voted against that, and I would have lost. Fine. And perhaps he's engaged in this behavior with the hope of absolution. As you know, I think even if I believed in God, I don't believe in absolution, and certainly not of certain things. Maybe thievery. I don't know. Maybe grand larceny. You know, I don't believe it for the other guy who assaulted young boys. I recently heard an excuse he gave for that, like it was vengeance for his brother had something like that done, and it's just like, again, you know, all of us have had points where we want to seek vengeance, but only psychopaths do it that way, committing assault and rape. Anyway, so I scroll down the page. This is why I'm so angry, because I already knew that this church, like, basically thought being gay, being a homosexual, was a choice. And I also knew that it's not this church specifically, but this sect of Christianity believes that they love their homosexual brothers and sisters, but they're going to hell if they don't accept Christ and follow the letter of the Bible. So, like, I can't stand when people say that. Like, we love them and we accept them in the church, but what? But then it's okay to think they're going to burn in hell for something that isn't a choice. I just can't. So I'm scrolling down his page, and he has a fucking post about a march of a whopping 200 people who found Christ and are now ex-LGBT community members. I mean, for those 200 people, I feel like a great deal of sadness, I guess. I mean, if they're genuinely happy and their hearts are full of love and they feel like they can lead a full life, without their sexual desires being met, great. I mean, look, I take Lexapro. I'm not that interested in sex, period. I'm 41. Like, I'm just not in that phase of my life. So if you're not, great. I mean, if that's right for you, or maybe you were a kid who didn't know what you were looking for. And so you tried a lot of things and you gave yourself a label, and you were sort of more fluid, and then you thought you had to give yourself a label, and then later the label didn't fit. I know people who did that, who tried it all on, and figured it out, or never figured it out, but whatever. I was just, so I saw this post about, and then some member of this fucking place said on and on, I know all these people had a choice, we all have choices, and I literally, I want to cry and laugh. It makes me so sad that people within a 10-mile radius believe this. And this was someone who, before the grand larceny, I'd really liked when I first moved out here, because he seemed really open-minded and kind and laid back, and my husband was so into AA, and we had a weird sort of beginning with that, because I've never been as into it, and I thought this guy was really nice, and he may have been, and something changed, and now, after his thievery, he's gone off the deep end, man, looking for absolution, or what the fuck? How about some personal fucking responsibility? How about not showing up to the group with a smug smile on your face after stealing from everybody? And these aren't wealthy people. Sure, I believe in forgiveness, absolutely, but I also think it's really important to show some fucking humility before that forgiveness should be asked for at all. It has not been long enough. And, at least the rapist, it's been a long time and he's spent whatever. Something. I have some judgment there, and it just kind of enrages me. And it's not because I'm so progressive. It's because shut the fuck up about your Christian ideals, and then you sort of pretend to love but actually hate a group of people. Because to sentence someone to death and damnation, or, hellfire, whatever, to sentence someone to that because of who they fall in love with is just pedestrian and ignorant and boring. And, all three of these people involved, when I saw the post at first about the baptism, I was like, so there's got to be a joke here. A rapist, a felon, unconvicted, and a fundamentalist walk into a bath. Help me out if you know where to go with that. And I'm sorry if all of this pisses you off. I am opinionated. I try not to bring my politics into this, but look, I am what I am. And, it actually doesn't affect my big book reading at all. It helps me to contextualize it for you guys and for others, and it helps me to, I don't know. But I prefaced it with a truth. I think of myself as a true liberal. What I mean by true liberal is that I believe very strongly and firmly in the First Amendment. So that means I'm going to hear stuff that I don't like. And it means I'm going to hear stuff that makes me uncomfortable. And it means that the world and everyone around me, I'm not always going to be in a safe space. And just at my job, I'm not in a safe space emotionally. I have to hear opinions that I disagree with or make me really uncomfortable, and that's okay. And if it's something that makes me really uncomfortable, like when the Kavanaugh stuff came up and I was very, very worked up in my own personal life, and it was, causing a lot of angst for me because of events in my past, I went into the office and it was fine, and I listened when I could, and when I couldn't, I closed my office door and put on my headphones. Like, that's the personal responsibility part of it. I can't take away. People can think whatever they want, and quite frankly, they can say whatever they want. Do I think the president should do that? No. But all these thoughts and words can exist, and absolutely. But I can also take responsibility for what I can handle, and I can remove myself from situations when I need to. It's my responsibility to know my boundaries. Someone who doesn't know me only has to respect certain boundaries, right? He or she only has to respect literally physical boundaries, like no assault. That's a good place to start. But they can say anything they want. And I can choose to argue. I can choose to walk away. I can choose to put my headphones on. Like, it's just, that's my responsibility to take care of. I can choose to listen. Believe it or not, I have Trump supporters in my life who I love. Do we avoid the topic? Sure. I do it on this podcast. And you have a choice to stop listening if you don't like what I'm saying, right? If you disagree, you have a choice to dislike it on YouTube. You have a choice not to subscribe. You have a choice to leave comments. I am worried about people who troll. I don't like it. I don't see the point. I don't want to engage with them. And some nights that's easier than others. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. I was just like, I can't. Like, it just feels so disingenuous. Not finding religion, fine. Although then there was another post. This is why I can't go on Facebook, right? Because I just get so entangled in bullshit. Another post about, pray for this guy. Oh, and this was like after the El Paso shooting. I'm just like, pray, that's great. If that's what you need to do for you too, like to get through something traumatic and horrible. But like, if you're praying for other people, and I say this always in the podcast, like, then go do something. So putting your thoughts and prayers out on Twitter or saying it, like, it's not enough. In El Paso, they need blood because of all the horrific things that happened and all the work they had to do and all the lives they lost even doing it. I watched an interview with a doctor, and it was the ER doctor, and it was just, he was crying that they couldn't have saved more lives. They take an oath to do that. How incredibly hard for them. So how many lives are impacted by that shooter and his horrific, evil behavior? But so pray and then go give blood, right? Faith without works is dead. If you're not letting God work through you, then it's all for naught. It's meaningless. So, okay. You're welcome for spewing all my rage. Now, where were we on step 4? I think I left off saying something about, like, all mammals feel empathy or sympathy or understanding. There's a compassion in all mammals. And I believe that to be true. Anyway, there was this brilliant story recently about elephants. This is so sad. I can barely take it. The elephant mother, her baby died. And this came up because I don't have children. I don't really want them. One day I would maybe adopt, if financially possible, adopt a refugee child, something like that. Not because I'm so wonderful, but because I think, we should do where the need is. I'm not a mother, so someone had recently said to me, we need more aunts in the world. She also isn't going to have children, and I love that. Like, we do need more aunts in the world. Aunts, some people say. Okay. And I love that thought, and I was telling someone else about that, and she referenced this elephant story. So that's the thunder. It's like thunder, lightning. Sorry, I'm all over the place. So the elephant mother was carrying her baby around in her trunk, and for days. And then the other female elephants in the herd, the aunts, they came up and they encircled her. And they gently took the baby from her and put him aside and did their elephant thing. And then they took her and led her forward. So I just think we've all got it in us. All mammals, and probably non-mammals too. No, I found where I left off. Okay. I guess we were at the bottom of page 45. We'll read a minute. We also clutch at another wonderful excuse for avoiding an inventory. Our present anxieties and troubles, we cry, are caused by the behavior of other people who really need a moral inventory. We firmly believe that if only they'd treat us better, we'd be all right. Therefore, we think our indignation is justified and reasonable. Now, I do think this applies to some people. I was certainly angry with my mother mostly when I came in. I didn't have other resentments. Not the way they describe them here. When I came to understand, I blamed her for a lot. And the truth is, there's some stuff to blame her for, right? But the truth is also that she's a human and she did the best she could with what she had. And it is so much easier to forgive and let go. And that's, in part, we probably all have some kind of parent or sibling, quote unquote, resentment. And maybe that resentment is caused by trauma or damage. But the resentment itself is not helping you. And the blame game just isn't helpful. I mean, we see it in every facet of our society right now. Blaming. And it's not a solution to anything. And it certainly won't enhance your life. Even if the person's, worthy of the blame and the anger. Who's it helping? So, if you're going to boil step 4 down to something, whether the anger or sadness or hurt, anguish, whether those other people deserve it or not isn't the issue. The issue is now getting you well and whole and holding on to some of those more poisonous emotions, holding on to some of that stuff. And this, I think, is true for any human. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help you become a better citizen of the world. It holds you back more than likely. Now, does that mean get over it in the first 90 days, in the first year? At the end of step 4, you have to be, in step 5, you're relieved of all of it? Absolutely not. That's unrealistic and ridiculous. And I often tell a newcomer responsee that, we're going to take it one at a time. Let's look at your biggest one and work slowly through it. And you learn from that, and then it becomes an ongoing practice. Okay, page 46. At this stage of the inventory proceedings, our sponsors come to the rescue. They can do this, for they are carriers of AA's tested experience. They comfort the melancholy one by first showing him, They comfort the melancholy one by first showing him that his case is not strange or different, that his character defects are probably not more numerous or worse than those of anyone else in AA. This the sponsor promptly proves by talking freely and easily, but without exhibitionism, about his own defects, past and present. So, defects, his own bad behavior, past and present. So, I've talked about this before. This is where later, when you've gone through the steps and you start to sponsor or help newcomers or whatever, this is where you get to use your most shameful stories, most cringe-inducing anecdotes, the things about which you feel yuckiest. You get to use them to help another person, and that is a great relief, that all of those experiences aren't just a pile of yuck. They can be put to better use. So you turn the shame around. You use it to help others. And this is not, new to AA. And it wasn't certainly new even when Bill and Bob were writing this, or when Bill wrote the 12 and 12. The idea of, it's the basic premise of AA, why one alcoholic can help another. Because really only another alcoholic fully understands and knows that, that cringeworthy behavior, understands it from the inside out. But this is true for everything, right? It's why I try to talk really openly about my medication, about my sexual misadventures, I don't need to get into those here, but, if you've done some stuff that you feel really yucky about, or you've had some stuff done to you that makes you feel ashamed, which it shouldn't make you feel ashamed, really shoot me an email. I'm happy to reveal all that stuff. Sometimes the public domain is not the best place for it, trolls. But the more open I am about my quote-unquote defects, which I like to call damages, bad behavior, selfish behavior, the more open I am about all of that, the less alone you may feel in your craziness, in your guilt, in your shame, in your remorse, in your fear, right? So, in step 4, a big part of this is like prepping you for later. If you can admit a lot of this stuff to yourself, right? Because a lot of us compartmentalize or deny, because that is our brain's way of keeping us safe. How can we go on in the world with all this stuff, this yuck built up? So, our brains take care of us, but there is a freedom in admitting it, at least to yourself to start, and then hopefully to another human being, which, as you know, I do not think has to be a sponsor. Though it helps when you're talking about the alcoholic stuff to talk to another alcoholic who really gets it. And it can feel a little less scary to say it out loud to another alcoholic, because you're pretty sure he or she's done similar things. Now, that said, I'm a little judgy on the rape stuff. So I might not be someone's best sponsor, but here's what I think. I think that in the room of AA, if that's what someone has to tell me to move forward with it, then I would listen, and perhaps I would hear another side of it. Perhaps. I'm giving myself more credit than I should. I don't think I'd be able to listen to that. But I guess some men can and not do anything about it. But the point here is your sponsor should be sharing freely, openly, and without shame about his or her experiences in order to help you feel comfortable admitting your own. Because in or out of the rooms, we all done some shit we don't feel proud of. Okay. Page 47. We thought conditions drove us to drink, and when we tried to correct these conditions and found that we couldn't, to our entire satisfaction, our drinking went out of hand and we became alcoholics. It never occurred to us that we needed to change ourselves to meet conditions, whatever they were. Sure, again, true for some people, certainly was true for me sometimes. But then I think some people start drinking because of a condition, right? An outside condition, a death, a trauma. So some people pick it up to get through, to self-medicate or whatever, to get through a really hard time. And it works for them, and they aren't alcoholics, so they stop when things get better. And some people, it turns out, are alcoholics, so they drink because of their conditions, and then, oh shit, they can't stop. So I think conditions play a part, just like I think conditions of your childhood play a part. I think there's more than one thing that plays a part in the total picture of your alcoholism. Like, if it's true, and I tend to think this is true, science is saying this more and more, the person who starts drinking younger is more likely to become an alcoholic because everything is still unformed in their bodies. So their brains, everything is still growing and forming. And so the dependence, just like a baby born crack addicted, right? The dependence, it's just more likely that you're going to depend on it. And probably there's some anecdotal stuff there too. Like if a 13-year-old is driven to get shit-faced, whatever. So then it is the answer to life's traumas and problems. Then it is the thing. So throughout life, it is the thing. It's not that you just think you need it. You may. I mean, you may be completely dependent on it. This is like a hard one for me to be completely objective about, I guess, because, or maybe I'm being completely objective. Like, I think so many more things play into it than just you're an alcoholic. Like, I'm born that way, so no matter what happened, I would have been. No, I just don't believe that's true. And there is definitely a point where, daily drinkers, all-day drinkers, become literally physically dependent, which is why they have to go into detox, because they can die detoxing alone. So the physical dependence is very real, especially after a long time drinking, which is why, I love when young people come in because, wow, you've got a whole life ahead of you of total freedom and no hangovers. But I also, when people in their 50s and 60s, and we even had a guy come in at one point in his 70s, like, I am just like, that is friggin' awesome, because even though you can figure out you're an alcoholic at any age and stop the cycle, just, wow. To stop it after 50 years of doing it is like shockingly strong and amazing to me, because you're not just, the longer you have a habit, the harder it is to break. Like, I used to know this girl who'd, smoked for 10 years, and she would talk about how she'd quit, and she was really holier than thou about it. And she'd give this woman I know a really hard time who'd smoked for 40 years. And I was like, can you not compare your 10 years to her 40? Like, it's just not the same thing. She's gone through many more life events using smoking as whatever it is for her, a stress reliever or whatever, and a habit, right? So, yes, you're an alcoholic if you say you're an alcoholic, and yes, it's a horrible thing at any age, but just imagine having done it for 40 years, gone through every part of your life with it. Like, that is, sort of a shocking and inspiring thing. And I'm saying that as someone who drank from 12 to, God, whatever it is now, 32? How many? I'm 9 years in October, so I'm 41. I'm not great with math on the spot. Anyway, Okay, where were we? I'm really all over the place. I'm back on Lexapro. Maybe that has something to do with it. All right, but in AA, we're back to reading. In AA, we slowly learned that something had to be done about our vengeful resentment, self-pity, and unwarranted pride. Okay, so if you identify with those emotions, absolutely do something about it. It sucks. You don't want to live with that. It's what I said before, like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But you can also fill those words in with something else. Self-loathing, Something had to be done about our self-loathing, our damages, our endless anguish. We had to drop the word blame from our speech and thought. Sure, blame, as I said before, really isn't useful. And I think this is probably true for all humans. We see, there's like a plague of blame right now in our society. We're now on page 48. The course ahead began to look easier, for we had started to get perspective on ourselves, which is another way of saying that we were gaining in humility. I don't know if it's a way of saying we're gaining in humility, so much as like we're, erasing some of the blind spots. Perspective on ourselves is important. It's also something that definitely comes with age a little bit. But if you're putting some work into that, that's phenomenal. Because to better yourself is to better the world. And without awareness of our bad behavior or defenses or damages, we can't change. We don't know what needs changing if we don't look at it, look for it, and then look at it, right? Okay, so page 49 I find really preachy and obnoxious. I will say there's top paragraph, when the satisfaction of our instincts for sex security in society becomes the sole object of our lives, then pride steps in to justify our excesses. All these failings generate fear, a soul sickness in its own right. Then fear in turn generates more character defects. Unreasonable fear that our instincts will not be satisfied drives us to covet the possessions of others, to lust for sex and power. So, I think this is very male and very unique, like a singular type of male, not sensitive, not all males by any stretch. But again, my perspective is always coming as a woman. I think it's very difficult for some women, and I'm sure some men, but many women, to identify with this, because women were, not all women, but many of us were taught to be, or something in us, maybe, I think it's more taught, to be people-pleasing, or to have no firm boundaries, and to be fearful. And we were taught those things. Yeah, so there's another way to read that. Page 50. I have to think more about it. Page 50. As we persist, a brand new kind of confidence is born, and the sense of relief at finally facing ourselves is indescribable. These are the first fruits of step 4. And this, I think, is totally true. No matter what, doing it in step 4, doing it as you progress through life, finally sort of looking at something that's been holding you back, facing it, and working on changing it. Just the act of the work of changing it really does bring a new level of confidence and relief, in my experience. By now, the newcomer has probably arrived at the following conclusions: that his character defects, representing instincts gone astray, have been the primary cause of his drinking and his failure in life. Okay, wait a minute. Is it our instincts, or were we born alcoholics? I mean, maybe they're saying that's the same thing, but is it a disease or is it an instinct? I just think this paragraph's too harsh, and I think it's very confusing next to the big book. So is it an allergy, or is it instincts, or is it a disease of perception, or, don't label it like, as I said, there are so many things that feed into it. Bottom of the page, when and how and in just what instances did my selfish pursuit of the sex relation damage other people and me? What people were hurt, and how badly did I spoil my marriage and injure my children? This is very Bill, because he was still cheating on Lois when he was writing this. He was a philanderer throughout his marriage. So, it's very sex-focused in here, but you could fill in the word sex. You'll hear some guys do a separate sex inventory. My feeling is your sexual misadventures should be a part of your inventory, period, unless you were someone who really mistreated women, and then perhaps you need other therapy. So this is very centered on Bill's particular problem and the thing he's struggling with. So, I think you can just fill in pursuit of sexual relation with something else. So, in what instances did my selfish pursuits, period, damage other people? In what instances did my bad behavior because I was drunk damage other people? And how badly? Okay, skipping down, we're over to 51. Another sort of thing that needs historical context, being written in the 50s by a man, surveying his business or employment record. Almost any alcoholic can ask questions like these. In addition to my drinking problem, what character defects contributed to my financial instability? Did fear and inferiority about my fitness for my job destroy my confidence and fill me with conflict? So, of course, this applies to women now. But so I would change the language a little bit if you're looking at financial instability and things you may have done because of that fear. But instead of saying, did fear and inferiority destroy my confidence, you might say, did I undervalue myself? Did I feel like an imposter? Page 52. The most common symptoms of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression. And I'm going to add and anxiety and self-loathing. These stem from causes which sometimes seem to be within us, and at other times come from without. To take inventory in this respect, we ought to consider carefully all personal relationships which bring continuous or recurring trouble. So that's it. Resentment is continuous and recurring trouble, and that trouble doesn't have to be anger. You can change this to imbalance or biology or trauma, this within us. Within us can mean a lot of different things. 53. But is it from our twisted relations with family, friends, and society at large that many of us have suffered the most? We've been especially stupid and stubborn about them. So, for some people, yes, it is from twisted relations with family, friends, and society, maybe more family and friends, that many of us have suffered the most. I mean, if you're a victim of molestation, of a pedophile, something that was uncontrollable in your childhood, if you had a really fucked up family life, or even not that fucked up, I mean, it's subjective. It's subjective. So when we're little, what do we know from others? But yeah, I mean, that may be a big cause, and not all of us were especially stupid or stubborn about it. The primary fact that we fail to recognize is our total inability to form true partnership with another human being. I mean, again, true for some people. I'm certainly someone who has an attachment disorder that stems back to my adoption, right? So alcohol helped with that. It helped me to feel more attached. Were they real attachments? No. Was I looking for attachments anywhere I could? Yes. Was I seeking love in any way I could? Absolutely. When I was young, I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know what it meant. So I sought it with booze and with sex and with drugs. I used it to help me attach. Now I understand I have an attachment disorder. I'm willing to work on it, but I'm not better yet. It's still a really hard thing for me. And maybe you too. So the bottom of this page, we have not once sought to be one in a family, to be a friend among friends, to be a worker among workers, to be a useful member of society. Wrong. A lot of us have, most of us probably have, and didn't feel like we could. We didn't have the self-confidence we needed to be those things. This self-centered behavior blocked a partnership relation with anyone. Some will object to many of these questions posed because they think their own character defects have not been so glaring. To these, it can be suggested that a conscientious examination is likely to reveal the very defects the objectionable questions are concerned with. Because our surface record hasn't looked too bad, we have frequently been abashed to find that this is so simply because we have buried these self-same defects deep down in us under thick layers of self-justification. Whatever the defects, they have finally ambushed us into alcoholism. I mean, it's fair. It's rough language. Fair enough. It's worth taking a look, checking your side of the street. You may be fine. Your side of the street may be clear. My guess is if you're drinking heavily, you've hurt some people, you've pushed some people away, even if it doesn't seem that bad compared to others. Subjective. It's still your job to clean it up. It's still your job to, personal responsibility to admit to those things and take care of them. So again, it is subjective. It is worth looking at, even if your record doesn't look that bad, even if it doesn't look like mine, or it doesn't look like the rapists or the felons. It doesn't mean it's sparkly clean. So this is, that comparing, not identifying. At the root of it, those behaviors probably caused a little shame or upset or anguish. So again, that's when I say that's what step 4 is about. It's not looking just for anger. It's sort of searching for the areas where you could have done better. But, let's reword it a little. Self-justification, let's say, or we needed to use certain defensive behaviors just to feel safe. We were damaged and acted out perhaps in yucky ways because of those damages, the trauma. Really, were there situations in which we were harmed, real or perceived, but in which we bear some responsibility? If so, what may have caused the feelings that led to the improper handling of the situation? Did I play a part and why? So let me just repeat that one last time and then we'll finish up. This is step 4, in my opinion. Were there situations in which we were harmed, real or perceived, where we bear some responsibility? You may not. But if you do, what do you think caused the feelings that led to the improper handling of the situation? Did I play a part? What part did I play, and why did I play it? Did I play a part What part did I play, and why did I play it? On that note, I hope you got through my rant, or fast forwarded through the rant and got to step 4. And I love you all, and I hope I helped, and I hope that no matter what, AA or not, you know that there is a way.